I'm Sandy Petersen. Let's talk about Shoggoths. Shoggoths were created at the dawn of the world when a species of genius intelligence aliens known as the Old Ones or Elder Things came down to the barren earth. They created the Shoggoths to be a worker race for them. Now, the Shoggoths are entities of primal protoplasm, able to form organs as they will. So if you look at a Shoggoth, it's constantly forming and resorbing eyes and other structures as needed. The Shoggoths eventually rebelled against the Old Ones and exterminated them on Earth. How big is a Shoggoth? Well, we see one in Lovecraft's story at the Mountains of Madness. It appears at the end of the story. Spoilers, yeah, I know. So, this Shoggoth fills a tunnel 15 feet in diameter and rolls down it at the heroes. Now, we don't know how far the Shoggoth extended back down the tunnel, but the smallest it could be, we will assume, is a sphere 15 feet across. How much is that? Well, next we have to figure out how much a Shoggoth weighs, what its density is. Well, we know Shoggoths can swim, so they're not way more dense than water. They don't bob around like corks, so they're probably not way less dense than water. Now, because they can modify their body structure, obviously a Shoggoth could be lighter by adding gas bladders or heavier by holding gravel in it or something. But on the average, I think it's safe to say they have a similar density to flesh, like a fish or a human. After all, they're what we came from. We evolved from Shoggoths. Now, a sphere of flesh 15 feet in diameter weighs 60 tons. That means the smallest possible Shoggoth from the Mountains of Madness, which is just an ordinary random Shoggoth, bear in mind, not like some kind of super being, was 60 tons. That's as much as a tank or a dinosaur or a whale. Shoggoths are huge, and you can combine them together to make bigger Shoggoths, or just grow a big one. The Old Ones did this all the time, so you could have Shoggoths that were much larger. Let's talk about the general threat of a Shoggoth. In the story, The Weird Shadow over Innsmouth, the Deep Ones, in the 20th century, plan to make a Shoggoth and apparently think this is enough to pose a sizable threat to maybe not the whole United States, but at least New England. Now, at this time, the American military had tanks and airplanes and battleships and submarines and depth charges and flamethrowers and machine guns, yet the Old Ones, who knew all this and understood perfectly what our technological capabilities were, thought a Shoggoth would be dangerous enough to hurt us. Now, this probably wasn't a 15-foot diameter Shoggoth, but probably one that weighed several thousand tons. Even so, one creature of several thousand tons that has all the powers of Shoggoth is apparently enough of a threat for the Deep Ones to think when they finish this, we'll have humanity on its knees. Let's bust some stereotypes. Blob monsters are usually perceived as slow, creeping menaces. This is not true of Shoggoths. They're fast. In the Mountains of Madness, the thing raced down the tunnel at the speed of a subway train. The humans could barely keep ahead, even though the Shoggoth was slowed down by having to stop and eat penguins along the way. So they're fast. They can really move. Second, another stereotype of blob monsters is that they're mindless, that they can't think, they just eat things. Now that's creepy and scary, but it's also not true of Shoggoths. Shoggoths can read, they can write, they can speak. Now they're mimics, naturally, so they don't have their own Shoggoth language. In the Mountains of Madness, they spoke in the language of the Old Ones. We don't talk to the Shoggoth in Shadow over Innsmouth, but presumably it would speak in the Deep Ones' language. And if humans had a Shoggoth, I'm sure you could teach it to speak in human language, though heaven knows what kind of accent it would have. So Shoggoths are smart. Now, how smart? Well, the Old Ones thought of them as semi-intelligent. But the Old Ones were super genius race of aliens, and they pretty much thought of humans as semi-intelligent too. Does that mean Shoggoths are as smart as humans? Probably not, but since they can write and read, maybe at least Neanderthal or better, and presumably you could wire up Shoggoths to make a bigger brain, maybe that would make them smarter. It's not clear how their nervous system, which they probably don't have one actually, functions. So Shoggoths are smart. How strong is a Shoggoth? Well, they are mind-numbingly strong because they can turn their whole body into one muscle. Okay, imagine that small 60-ton Shoggoth we talked about before. Imagine a 60-ton muscle. That could really pull a lot of weight and effort. How does a Shoggoth kill you? Another stereotype of a lot of blood monsters is that they dissolve you with acid or poison or some kind of toxin. Shoggoths obviously can create acid glands. They can make poison gas glands. They can probably make explosive bombardier beetle type shots. They can make electric organs like an electric eel. They can make anything. But they probably don't. Simply because the Shoggoth is so strong and so fast and so powerful that any kind of poison, even the fastest poison like an arrow frog or a toadfish, is slow acting compared to what the Shoggoth can do by simply rolling over you, crushing you, pulling you apart. We know that a Shoggoth's favored method of killing enemies is to suck off their heads. They know that works. So we have a 60-ton or more blob monster racing towards you at the speed of a subway train that when it hits you immediately pulls you apart. It's strong enough to pull apart a tank or to take down a skyscraper. It doesn't need poison. It could make it if you needed poison for some reason, but it's not really its method of action. So here's this giant strong monster that races upon us and destroys us. How can we stop it? Well, guns are right out. If you shoot a Shoggoth, it will put a hole in it, sure, but the Shoggoth will seal up the hole. Now, if the Shoggoth made a heart, then I guess if you shot the heart, it would kill that heart, but the Shoggoth could, make another heart or fix that one. I mean, it's like, shooting Shoggoth is like shooting a tree that seals up again after you shoot it. So guns aren't really effective. Though incendiary bullets may have a slight effect. We'll talk about that later. Let's talk about swords. Well, swords are even stupider to fight a Shoggoth with, because not only do they not kill the Shoggoth, because it seals up, but also you have to get within reach of the Shoggoth, which is a super bad idea. Don't do that. How about explosions? Can we blow up a Shoggoth? Sure. If you blow up a Shoggoth with a grenade or a bomb, it will shatter into a lot of little Shoggoths. Now, that actually might have some usefulness in that the little Shoggoths may want to reform into the big one again, but it doesn't really solve your problem. I always thought in the end of John Carpenter's The Thing, where they blow up the thing, was kind of dumb, because we knew earlier in the movie that even a little piece of the thing was still alive, so exploding it doesn't seem to be an effective approach to getting rid of it. Maybe the idea was that the heat of the explosion did something, who knows. But exploding the Shoggoth is basically not going to be effective either, although it might slow it down. Presumably little Shoggoths move slower than big ones. They take a while to reform. You might have time to get away, but we're trying to kill it, not just get away. So let's discuss the famous weapon that we always use on blob monsters in movies and stories. Ice. Freezing the Shoggoth. Will this work? It worked on the blob. Well, not so much on a Shoggoth. How do we know this? Because Shoggoths actually live and are seen in the central part of Antarctica, where it never reaches above freezing. Okay, now the water, of course, is never freezing because they're just in water, but this Shoggoth was on the land inside a glacier and didn't seem to have any problems at all. So clearly Shoggoths don't have any trouble with cold. Now, I suppose if you used a bunch of liquid air on a Shoggoth and froze it solid, that might stop it, but I'd be suspicious about whether it would thaw out again and be active. I'm not sure how the Shoggoths survive freezing temperatures. They might simply produce antifreeze in their body like certain fish do. They might have heat. They can certainly be warm-blooded if they want, just make organs that make heat, So cold isn't going to be effective. I wouldn't try cold on a Shoggoth, unless you have like a giant container of liquid air or something, but the odds of that are so slim, and the Shoggoth have to be there. Let's not worry about that. How about fire? This is also a traditional weapon on blob monsters, if not Shoggoths. So fire has the following weaknesses. Shoggoths are made of flesh. They are basically mostly water, just like we are. So here's this animal, mostly water. It's not really flammable. I mean, it has proteins in it, but it's not, I don't know if it has fats or things like that would burn. So what you do, you'd spray napalm over the Shoggoth, and it would ignite, and it would use its own oxidant inside the napalm. It would heat the Shoggoth and be bad for it. Certainly fire is not going to be good for the Shoggoth. It's going to be less effective than on a human. With a human, a lot of the ways that fire and flamethrowers work to kill us is, the most obvious way is that there's pain all over us that incapacitates us. When we use large chunks of our skin, that's it for us. We're going to die soon afterwards. Also, breathing in the flames scorches our lungs, which makes them fill up. That can kill us really fast. So all those things are bad for humans, but not so much for Shoggoths. They don't have lungs to scorch. I mean, yes, they can make lungs. In fact, they probably have lungs when they're on land. But if the lung gets scorched, they just discard it and make a new lung. They don't have permanent skin that they care about being scorched. So what would happen if you burned a Shoggoth is the outer layer of the Shoggoth would be heated and cooked and killed. No doubt about that. The Shoggoth would then either shed that outer layer and keep going, or ball it up, maybe to suppress the flame and keep going. It would just it would destroy part of the Shoggoth, but not the whole thing. Over time, or if you had enough heat, you could probably eventually burn the Shoggoth down to nothing. But it's not a miracle weapon that burns it up like when you're burning up a zombie or something like that. The Shoggoth will be not like the fire. It will be hindered by the fire, but it will not be as dangerous as it would to any other organism. Still, it's something. It's better than cold. Could poison work? Shoggoths are made of earth protoplasm. They're a natural creature in a sense. So, could poison stop a Shoggoth? Well, there's 4 basic types of poisons. We have neurotoxins, hemotoxins, cytotoxins, and vesicants. These all work in different ways. Let's talk about the neurotoxins first. Neurotoxins interfere with your nerves. They can cause brain damage. They can basically they make you stop breathing, or your muscles stop working. Even your heart stop beating in a large enough dose. This is how a lot of deadly poisons work, including how most heavy metals work, like lead poisoning, mercury poisoning, that kind of thing. This I don't think is going to be effective on a Shoggoth, because I don't think they have nerves, or if they can make nerves, but then they can reform them. So I don't think a neurotoxin is going to have any real effect on a Shoggoth. It's basically safe from these. How about hemotoxins? Well, that's what a rattlesnake does, is it bites you and the hemotoxin lyses your red blood cells. I knew a guy who was bit by a rattlesnake. It bit him on the little finger here. It was a pygmy rattlesnake. And as a result, his finger swelled up and a huge black, looked like a bruise, went clear up his arm to his elbow. And he didn't get reuse of his finger for 6 months, so it was pretty dire. But the Shoggoth doesn't have red blood cells to lyse, so I don't think it would care about a hemotoxin. Cytotoxins. Cytotoxins directly disrupt cells or kill them. Now, are Shoggoths made of cells? Maybe? It's hard to say. I think they might just be a big mass of formless protoplasm. They might be able to make cells and dissolve them. Even if they do have cells, the cytotoxin would... You don't have enough cytotoxin typically to poison everything in your creature at once. So you could poison part of it, and then that part, the Shoggoth could redissolve or kick out. I mean, I don't think a cytotoxin is going to go anywhere with a Shoggoth either. So, neurotoxins, hemotoxins, cytotoxins, we only have one left, the vesicant. Now, vesicants, now we're getting somewhere. A vesicant is a deadly chemical, usually a gas, like mustard gas. Tear gas is technically a vesicant, something that raises blisters and directly damages the tissue when it hits it. So, how about this? Some metals and chemicals do this as well. Technically, fluorine would be a vesicant if you got hit by it, but it would also set you on fire, so fluorine's really good. But we can't get enough fluorine to spray a Shoggoth with, so let's not worry about that. So vesicants. Well, here comes a Shoggoth. We hit it with a bunch of mustard gas. Well, the outer layer of the Shoggoth is damaged, as with fire, but again, it can shed that outer layer and keep going, or discard it, or reabsorb. It's not... On a human, if our eyes get blistered, and our tongues get blistered, and our lungs get blistered, and our hands get blistered, it's really disabilitating. On the Shoggoth, not so much. It can make new eyes, it can make new lungs, it doesn't care about its skin being damaged. In fact, it might keep the damaged skin on the outside of it as a protective layer, so that the more vesicant gas would only affect that layer, which is already blistered, doesn't care about, almost like a protective shell. So I think vesicants also don't work. And of course, there's the bottom line that a Shoggoth, since it can produce almost any kind of natural chemical, can probably produce antidotes and counteractants to most of these. One easy thing for the Shoggoth to do is cover its body with a protective slime. That's going to stop the vesicants and a lot of poisons from hurting it. So, Poisons and poison gas, not so much. Well, what do we have left? Well, we have airstrikes. These could drop napalm, which do hurt Shoggoths, and there's a lot of napalm in an airstrike. So let's consider this. Well, the Shoggoth can't really attack the plane, so there's that, so you can hit it without striking back. But here's the problem. The Shoggoth's smart. The Shoggoth travels underwater. The Shoggoth can travel through your sewer systems. So let's say that a Shoggoth attacks New York. What would happen is the Shoggoth sneaks into New York Harbor, goes into the sewers, comes up inside the city, and yes, at that point, we can use an airstrike to nuke it. A nuke would kill a Shoggoth, but at the point that we're nuking New York City to kill a Shoggoth, I think the Shoggoth still counts as having won. Or even if we're just dropping a bunch of napalm on it. So, now the radiation, would that damage a Shoggoth? Does a Shoggoth have DNA? I guess, because it's protoplasm, but it also probably has a lot of repair mechanisms for the DNA, so I don't think it's going to have an issue with repairing itself. And if it does, if you've actually succeeded in mutating the Shoggoth, I'm not sure that mutating the Shoggoth is a very good plan for us either. So, here's the Shoggoth. How did the old ones control the Shoggoths? Yes, the old ones eventually lost, but they did control them for millions of years. And they fought other races that had to fight Shoggoths. They fought the Yithians, they fought the Mi-Go, they fought other beings. How did these guys fight the Shoggoths? Well, the answer is simple. They used electricity. The Yithians had a thing that Lovecraft calls a lightning gun. The old ones also seem to have used electricity. Now, Lovecraft called them lightning guns because he didn't call them by what we call them now. Today, we call them particle beams. A particle beam shoots a stream of electrons that not only knocks a hole in the target, not so effective against a Shoggoth, but also chars the nerve endings, sends a beam of light of electricity right through it. Now in a human, it's really bad. It will char your nerves, it'll go down your nerve trunks, it burns you inside and out. On the Shoggoth, the nerve endings won't be hurt, the hole it makes isn't that big a deal, but it does char right through the Shoggoth and maybe branching past like a lightning strike. Now, when the Shoggoth's being burned inside, even if it's only a part of the Shoggoth, like it probably would be, that's still bad. It's harder for the Shoggoth to shed it, which slows it down. It destroys part of the Shoggoth, probably more of it percentage-wise than an outer layer of burning. So this is damaging. Now, one lightning strike won't kill the Shoggoth, especially if it's a really big one, but it hurts it. And if you keep it up, then you can eventually reduce the Shoggoth to uselessness or kill it. Now, the problem with this is that we don't really, have lightning guns. So I guess the bottom line here is Shoggoths are really hard to stop. But that makes sense. They're a bioengineered superweapon from an alien species far more advanced and intelligent than we are. Is it any wonder that we can't get a magic bullet to stop a Shoggoth? That said, there is one sort of magic bullet we could use. We know that Shoggoths are subject to controls of some sort. The old ones did it technologically. The deep ones did it, I think, ritually with like psychic powers. We don't know other beings who probably controlled Shoggoth. They have some way of controlling them. If we could get that control, whether it's a magical spell or a psychic ability or some kind of sympathetic code, then we could control the Shoggoth. We know the codes aren't perfect because the Shoggoth literally rose up and killed all the elder things, which are smarter than we are, but it's something. So what I'm saying is maybe the best way to handle a Shoggoth, assuming you don't have lightning guns or a nuke, is to not beat them, but join them. And that's what I have to say about Shoggoths.